actually always used this phrase, but then I saw it in a coffee shop. It's really famous. That says the best coffee is the one you like.
Switzerland, Mame. Yeah.
And for me, that's kind of like a philosophy.
So often where in any industry or any taste-driven industry is where people are talking at cross purposes. If you both think you're talking about the same thing but you're not, and I don't want to go off coffee, but on hospitality, I believe all quality of experience is driven by expectation. So you have like more traditional restaurants, say, that would just want to match an expectation, and then you have really modern conceptual restaurants that are trying to break it. The thing is, if you just wanted a traditional dish and you went into an experimental restaurant, you'd be annoyed.
Yeah.
And it's the same with specialty coffee. It depends what you're signing up for, right?
Exactly.
And yeah, I think your YouTube channel is great, but you can learn loads online, but ultimately you need to go and taste coffee.
Oh, for sure.
And that's how you know what you mean, right? So like you're like, oh, okay, what does someone mean by like a floral clean coffee or a lighter roast coffee? I always say this about coffee is it's a blessing and a curse.
Yeah.
The complexity is a good and a bad thing. It's a lot like any other geeky hobby, which is you cannot understand it all straight away. So the accessibility will always be challenging because the customer has to go and put time in. And with coffee, it means tasting and talking.
Yeah.
But that's also the nice thing. You can do that for years and years and years.
And it
never ends.
Things, never ends.
Yeah, exactly.
No, and I agree with you because I have this YouTube channel when I write a book, I give courses, but I totally agree with you, and I tell all my students that this is whatever you hear from YouTube or a book or from me, it's just the beginning. You make your own journey and experience, with experience.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's really good. I've seen that you are always innovating. Tell us about the importance of innovation in like the coffee industry.
Well, it's funny, because this year and last year, well, it's 2025 now, but for the last couple of years, I think I put as much time into maintenance as I do innovation, which is, I think the majority of what we do in coffee is actually about crafting something every day, repeatably, which is not about innovation.
Yeah.
But the innovation is what gets people excited and interesting, right? And sometimes the two interact. So you can have an innovation that makes the daily craft better, for example. I think
perfecting it.
Right. Like when is something just incremental improvement and when is something innovation? I think for something to be really innovative, it has to be a complete change, right? I think the key to innovation in my mind is there's a saying that was in the Nike book. What's that book called? Shoe Dog.
Shoe Dog, yeah.
Right? And I put it in my book as well. And it's this problem, which is the issue is that for the expert, the opportunities are less, right? Because they've been in it more, they know more. For the novice, they don't know anything. So they ask great questions, right? And I think it's about always maintaining that open-mindedness.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, often where innovation comes from. Because it's very easy to get caught in we have to do it this way. So I think the willingness to challenge what you think you know is really important. And that's something I like to think I do. And I think when the importance of innovation is, I think it can allow us to think about coffee differently in a positive way. I also do worry a bit that this is probably not true innovation, but like fad and novelty. There's quite a lot of that, I think, in everything now, especially through social media and like attention grabbing.
Yeah.
So I think true innovation in coffee is actually not that common, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because it's hard. But I do think we're about to see more innovation than ever.
Yeah.
Because this is a bit of a boring answer, but innovation has to be worth doing. And that means you need to be able to make money from it. And so often the problem with boutique coffee is it's so small. Someone might have a cool idea, but they can't make a business around it. And I think now that there is a load of people getting into specialty coffee, there is more value in exploring innovation. And I think the main area for innovation for me is this middle ground. So the super geeks often are happy to explore things. And then the mass commercial is sort of like, oh, I just want a caffeine hit. But that middle bracket of someone who really cares about quality, but also wants technology to help them make better coffee. That middle area, I think, is where you're going to see the most innovation in the coming decade.
Perfect. Yeah. That's really good, and that's kind of.
I keep jumping onto your next question.
Yeah, exactly. What are your predictions for the future of coffee and specialty? Or
Well, it's going to cost more.
Oh, for sure.
No, I think interestingly, people these today is, what day is it? The 5th? 6th. I'm always a day behind. The 6th of February 2025, and last night the highest, first time the C market had ever gone over $4 per pound since it's been around. Obviously,
And I've heard that it might go double digits in a couple, maybe even within a year.
over 10.
Yeah, could be.
Wow. It's so hard to know, right? And I think one of the issues for a lot of us who are in coffee is it's actually been very stable for a long time. I think myself and a lot of people agree it's been too low. And so that's now why it's such a shock, right? And obviously there's lots around supply and demand, weather, and you have to talk about which country, what's happening economically in every country. It's a complex global market.
Yeah.
But I would say from a cafe point of view, even at 400% increase, by the time, like, the importer just puts on a fixed margin, so that brings the increase down. Then the roasters typically are doing the same. So let's say the raw ingredient goes up double. The roaster doesn't cost them twice as much to roast it.
Yeah.
And then in the cafe, I actually think that the current C market is probably going to end up being 15 to 20p more per cup.
Yeah.
And the real price increases in cafes are not from the coffee, they're from the running costs, the staff and the rent and everything,
the rent
right?
Especially.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I think it's going to be an interesting time for everyone. The old days of cheap coffee are going to go. Like, commercial coffee today is more than a lot of people's house specialty blend 2 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
It's crazy, right? So this whole differential between like commercial and specialty is just gone.
Yeah.
But it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. And actually, back to the innovation point. Innovation often comes out of difficult situations, right? Instant coffee in the UK has been going down and down and down. Still, that's how most people in the British economy drink coffee, is instant. It's huge, like 70%.
Really?
Massive.
I thought it was lower.
No,
Here.
it's come down. It was 80%, right? But for the first time last year, it's creeping back up again. And I think that's a cost of living thing, right? When people start going, how can I save some money? You will see some people move. It's crazy, like instant's so cheap. Like, typical instant coffee, it won't be soon.
Yeah.
It's 4p per cup.
Yeah.
That's crazy, right? Whereas if you buy a bag of my beans, it's probably 90p a cup. So such a big difference. But back to the innovation bit, I think you're going to see more innovation around coffee to deal with the increased price. We go, okay, well, how can we keep the quality and find other ways to be more efficient with processes or delivery mechanisms?
Yeah.
I do think that sad news, I think it's going to be very hard for cafes, not because of the C price, but because, like, in the UK, we have the Labour government got in and they have a budget coming in April, which is really going to hit small independent businesses. So I guess I have mixed feelings for the sort of near-term future of coffee. There's more excitement from ever, like, culturally. People are more into coffee than ever. And when I got into it, like, a lot of people laughed when I said, like...
Yeah, for me too.
When I talk to people
about... Like, oh my God, he's doing cool things. But I'm like, before, it took me 9 years of everyone, even my parents, telling me...
What are you doing?
What are you doing with your life?
So that's cool. That's awesome, right?
Yeah.
But from a sort of business side, I think it's going to be challenging. So it's sort of mixed feelings. But... like I said, I think upside will be more innovation. And I think the really sort of high end of coffee will be to continue doing what it's doing.
Yeah.
You know, we're all more connected than ever before around the world. You know, like your high end producers like Pepe, you brought me his coffee today. Thank you very much. You know, these are becoming more comparable to a high end vineyard, you know, like reputational around the world. So the coffee market has been changing, and then potentially 2025, we're going to see faster change.
Okay, good. Okay, last question. Any words? Well, not a question. Any words for the next coffee generation of coffee lovers and coffee professionals? In my last book, I think maybe this will happen anyway with the pricing. But one thing I didn't like was this divide between specialty being like angels, like doing everything right, and commercial coffee being like the devil. Yeah. Right? It's all coffee grown on a tree. Yeah. And I think, you know, there's always a challenge when things are like niche counterculture. But I like the idea of embracing coffee as a whole industry, not trying to make it specialty versus
commercial. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Not that divide.
I don't think there needs to be a divide.
Yeah.
Some people argue there isn't.
Yeah.
But I think for people getting into it now, you're entering it at a time when it's a great time to get into coffee in terms of awareness and in terms of people's enthusiasm and passion for it. And but I would like to, I guess what I would like to see is, like me and you said, these traditional wash coffees. I would like to see us, not respect's the wrong word, but valuing.
Yeah.
Some traditional techniques, because I think coffee's got that feeling of newness to it, right?
Yep.
Whilst also exploring new things, which I think is happening. And also realise that although coffee is amazing, one bit of advice that Peter Giuliano gave people was he said, make sure your life's not just coffee.
Yeah.
You become obsessed with it, right? But make sure that you
process of opening up.
Yeah, make sure that you look after yourself in other ways and you have downtime. And there's a lot of burnout in coffee, right? It's very obsessive. So my advice would be definitely think about the business side of it. Like from a career point of view, don't just think about, oh, I love coffee. Think, okay, what kind of work do I want to do? And you can kind of get the two to match. But also try and have a balance and sometimes try and do something other than coffee. Which sounds like a funny thing to say because I love coffee, but that's a bit of advice that I'm like, I probably could have done that earlier as well, right? I like my hobbies. I like lifting things, and so. I think I said earlier, a 9-month-old daughter and stuff, and trying to get that life balance, I think, is probably my advice as well.
Perfect. And the last one, I just wanted to tell you, I came last year to the shop. You weren't here, but I had a really good time. I had good coffees. And I had the best espresso I've had in my life here. It was really good, really good. It was from the Reserve. I think it was a geisha from La Esmeralda.
Oh, well,
But now that I'm here with you, what's the best coffee you've ever had?
Best coffee I've ever had?
If you can, or one of the most memorable.
Well, I think it's amazing, right? Because I often wonder, that coffee I had in Melbourne that made me rethink coffee, what would I think of that coffee now?
Yeah.
I probably wouldn't think it was as good, right?
But
that's a big one for me. And so I think a lot of them they're moments in time, right?
Exactly.
So I could tell you what's my favourite coffee this year. What is my favourite coffee this year? There's so many good coffees now. It's probably, I love this Bolivian geisha from Finca Rodriguez.
And that's in the Reserve.
It is on the Reserve. It's been
having it after.
But you know what's interesting? When I used to do coffee competitions, right? You start with this coffee you choose and you love it.
Yeah.
But honestly, by the time you finish the competition season, you're like, I don't want to taste it ever again.
Yeah.
But there's this thing about time. So let's say a coffee can impress you once. That's cool, right? But what I like about Rodriguez is every time I have it, I'm impressed.
Nice.
And I think that's interesting to see how the coffee, we put it in a freezer and do all these things, but it tastes good like here in London. There's still different, even though we try, the water's slightly different in Bath or Bristol, but that coffee always impresses me. I'm just trying to think of some other standout coffees. Obviously Esmeralda for me is one of those incredible farms, and and we've had that coffee 3-4 years in a row and it was always good, which is another thing. Coffees from Ecuador. I had a Sidra years ago that was just like incredible, like purple.
Yeah.
And that was brought to us. There was a couple, and I think he was from Ecuador and she was from Italy. Okay. And they drove to our roastery in a 3-wheeler. And they just said, we brought the coffee in ourselves.
So were they producers?
No, he knew producers in Ecuador, but they wanted to start an importing company focusing on Ecuadorian coffee. But he brought the coffee, and I must admit, I have a policy to try everything blind, but I thought, it was just in a bag, no grain pro, off the back of a van. And I thought, this will be rubbish. And we set up a tasting, and I went across, and I was like, this is incredible. This coffee is amazing. And then that's when we started buying coffee from Ecuador. Nice. But I still love Ethiopian coffees. It may be challenging to get everything you want every year. But right now we've got Bomba lot, washed Sidamo lot, which is, I had it this morning. It's so good. It's hard to answer your question directly, but I definitely know I lean towards aromatic floral coffees. That's my preference. Yeah. And those are the coffees that excite me the most.
Perfect, great answer. Yeah, for me too. Traditional, washed, Ethiopian, floral, aromatics are the best. Have you had Yemeni coffee?
Yeah, well, I was going to bring Yemen up because we were involved in the first Yemeni auction in the UK run by Huma.
I went there yesterday, and it's the first time in like at least 10 years since an origin has shocked me as like Yemen, like Ethiopia did a couple of years ago.
Yeah, I think there's something there about the genetic strains of plants plus the processing that is like a super winey, unique profile.
Super spices.
Yeah, I think that's one of the origins which, is because you get other origins that come along and again, like people are like, oh, it's new, but like I always like, okay, well let's taste it blind against like a nice Guatemalan coffee, right? And sometimes they're not, it's just the story that's good, but not the quality. Yeah. Whereas those Yemeni coffees are definitely distinctive, although obviously they're expensive for lots of reasons. But I think there's an issue I saw here in the early days of geisha, right? Geisha's expensive. The really good stuff's really expensive, but even the bad stuff's expensive. Yeah. So people have a bad one and go, oh, I don't know what the fuss is about geisha. And it's like, no. You can't judge it on, do you see what I mean? On one. Yeah. Well, and even though that's still expensive for that coffee, it's not. And the same with Yemen, right? There was like, I think the first lot we bought was $300 a pound in the auction or something. And I think, again, from a coffee economy point of view, it's very hard to make money just off really high scoring small lots. You need it's that mid bracket. And I think that's been developing again in Yemen. But I remember a few people saying to me, oh, I tried a Yemeni coffee and it wasn't that great. And I'm sort of like, make sure you find an opportunity to try the really good stuff. Yeah.
Perfect. So thank you, Maxwell. It was a really nice interview, and thank you for your time.
It's a pleasure. Thanks. Nice to see you again.
Nice to see you.